I sat in that mahogany-paneled office, listening to the estate attorney drone through my parents' will, like he was reading a grocery list. My sister Amanda got the 4-bedroom lakefront villa worth $1.2 million. Me? I got a cracked asphalt parking lot in a rundown part of town, valued at $45,000. Then came my mother's voice on a recorded message, syrupy with that fake sweetness I knew so well. You can always sleep under the stars, Gage. Maybe the fresh air will teach you responsibility. Amanda and the relatives snickered. My hands shook with humiliation and rage as everyone stared, waiting for my reaction. The attorney handed me a manila envelope containing the deed. And I walked out of that office feeling like someone had punched a hole through my chest. Amanda called after me, something about getting together for coffee to talk about family, but her voice dripped with victory. I kept walking. 3 days later, I drove to see my inheritance for the first time. The GPS took me to the industrial side of town, past the old textile mill that had closed when I was in high school, past boarded-up warehouses with broken windows like missing teeth. The parking lot sat on a corner between a shuttered factory and a row of abandoned buildings, a half-acre of cracked asphalt, surrounded by a sagging chain-link fence. Weeds pushed through every crack and crevice, reclaiming the concrete inch by inch. I got out of my truck and stood there, staring at this monument to my parents' contempt. The wind carried the smell of old oil and rust. A shopping cart lay on its side near the fence, one wheel spinning slowly in the breeze. My phone buzzed. Amanda had posted photos on social media, showing off her new villa with its lake views and marble countertops. The caption read, "Blessed to inherit this beautiful family home. Mom and Dad had such great taste." 300 likes already. I wanted to throw my phone into the weeds. Instead, I climbed back in my truck and sat there, thinking about how we'd gotten here. Growing up, the favoritism had been so obvious that even teachers at school noticed. Amanda got ballet lessons, piano lessons, a private math tutor when she struggled with algebra. She got a brand new Honda Accord for her 16th birthday, wrapped in a big red bow in the driveway. I worked part-time at a grocery store bagging food and saved for 8 months to buy my used Ford pickup with 200,000 miles on it. When I asked my parents why Amanda got so much more, my father said she needed more support because she was sensitive. My mother said I was naturally independent and should be grateful for the chance to build character through hard work. The character I built was resentment. Amanda moved into the villa within a week. She threw a housewarming party and invited everyone, our cousins, our parents' old friends, people from the neighborhood where we grew up. My invitation must have gotten lost in the mail. I saw the photos, though. She'd hired a caterer. My girlfriend Tracy came over to my apartment that night and found me on the couch, staring at the wall. "You need to just sell that lot and move on," she said, tucking her blonde hair behind her ear. She worked as a dental hygienist and had a practical view of everything. "Take whatever you can get for it and put this behind you." "No," I said. "Gage, come on. Holding on to anger just hurts you, not them. I'm not selling it." She sighed, that particular sigh that meant she thought I was being stubborn for no good reason. Maybe I was, but something in me refused to just let this go, refused to accept that my parents could treat me like this even from the grave. I started camping out on the lot in my truck, spending nights there with my laptop, researching. The neighborhood looked dead, but I noticed things. New construction 2 blocks over. A coffee shop that had opened on the next street. Young professionals walking past in the mornings with to-go cups and messenger bags. On the 4th night, I found it. A city planning document talking about urban redevelopment initiatives in this exact area. New businesses, mixed-use buildings, apartment complexes. The neighborhood was coming back to life. My cracked asphalt parking lot sat right in the middle of it. I spent the next week working up a business plan. I went to a bank and sat across from a loan officer named Mr. Patterson, who looked at my lot deed and my projections. He approved me for $12,000, using the lot as collateral. With that money, I bought chain link fence to replace the sagging sections, asphalt patch to fix the worst cracks, and basic lighting fixtures. I worked 18-hour days, doing every bit of labor myself. My hands blistered, and my back ached. But I kept going. Tracy stopped coming around as much. She said I was obsessed. Maybe I was. After 2 weeks of brutal work, I put up a sign. Daily parking, $5. The next morning, a silver sedan pulled up. The driver rolled down his window. "You open for business?" "Yes, sir," I said. He parked, paid his $5, and walked toward the new office building 2 blocks away. I stood there holding that crumpled $5 bill like it was made of gold. Then a white city van pulled up, and a man in a polo shirt with a clipboard got out. He had a badge that said building inspector. "You the owner?" he asked. "That's me." He walked around the lot, making notes. My stomach tightened with each mark he made on his clipboard. "You got a problem," he said finally. "This lot doesn't meet current zoning codes for commercial parking operations. You need proper drainage systems, ADA-compliant accessible spaces, improved lighting that meets city standards, and clear directional signage. How long do I have?" My voice sounded hollow. 72 hours to bring it into compliance, or I shut you down. There's an $800 fine for the initial violation, plus $200 per day until you're compliant. He handed me the citation and drove away. I sat down right there on the asphalt, looking at that paper. The upgrades he wanted would cost at least $15,000. Money I didn't have. I didn't sleep that night. I called every contractor I knew, begging for quotes, for payment plans, for anything. Most of them laughed when they heard my timeline. 72 hours to completely renovate a parking lot? Impossible. Then I called Derek, an old buddy from a construction job I'd worked 5 years ago. He listened to my whole story without interrupting. "I can help with the drainage," he said. "I'll do it at cost if you help me with labor. But Gage, you're still looking at serious money for the rest." "I know. I maxed out 2 credit cards that week. $15,000 of new debt, on top of the $12,000 loan. I was in deep, gambling everything on a parking lot that might fail anyway. But what choice did I have? Give up and prove my parents right? Derek and I worked like demons. We dug trenches for drainage pipes in the blazing Sunday. I installed new LED lights on poles, my arms shaking from exhaustion as I bolted them into place. I painted parking space lines at 2 in the morning by the light of a rented generator. I mounted signs with arrows pointing to accessible spaces. Tracy came by on the second day. She watched me working, covered in dirt and sweat. "This is crazy, Gage. I know. You're going to lose everything. Maybe. I can't watch you do this to yourself." Her voice cracked. "I just can't." She left. I kept working. On the morning of day 3, 71 hours after I'd received the citation, the inspector came back. He walked around slowly, checking everything against his clipboard. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Well," he said finally, "everything appears to be in order. You're approved for commercial operation." I almost collapsed with relief. That afternoon, I opened for real business. The silver sedan came back. Then 2 more cars. Then 5. Word spread fast among the people working in the new buildings nearby. By the end of the first week, I'd made $400. The second week brought $700. By the end of month 2, I was making $2,000 a week. I started paying down my debt, chipping away at those credit card balances. For the first time since my parents died, I felt something other than anger or grief. I felt hope. My regulars became familiar faces. There was a guy named Thomas who worked at an architecture firm and always arrived at exactly 7:45. A woman named Beth, who managed the coffee shop down the street and brought me free lattes sometimes. An older man named Robert, who drove a vintage Mustang and liked to chat about cars. One morning, Beth mentioned her boss was looking for a monthly parking arrangement for his employees. "How many spots are we talking?" I asked. 10, maybe 12. I met with the coffee shop owner that week and negotiated my first corporate contract. 10 guaranteed spots at $150 each per month. $1,500 of steady, reliable income. I took Tracy out to dinner to celebrate. We'd been trying to patch things up, talking on the phone most nights. "I'm proud of you," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "You proved me wrong. I couldn't have done it without you believing in me," I lied. She hadn't believed in me, but I wanted things to work. That night, I couldn't sleep for a different reason. I kept thinking about the future, about what else I could do with the lot. I discovered in my research that it was zoned mixed use, which meant I could potentially develop it for retail or even residential use. A small building, maybe 3 stories, retail on the ground floor, apartments above. I'd turned a cracked parking lot into a business. What if I could turn it into something even bigger? The next morning, I was checking the day's receipts when I heard a car door slam. I looked up to see Amanda's white Mercedes SUV parked illegally across 2 spaces. She got out, wearing designer sunglasses and a dress that probably cost more than my monthly revenue. Behind her came our Uncle Harold and Aunt Patricia. My stomach dropped. Amanda took off her sunglasses, and I saw her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "Gage," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to talk." Harold stepped forward, his face grave. "Son, we have some concerns about the estate settlement." "The will was clear," I said. "Your sister has been going through your parents' papers," Patricia said, wringing her hands. "There are some things you don't know." Amanda pulled out a tissue and dabbed at her eyes. "Mom and Dad talked to me before they died. They promised me everything, Gage. They said the will was just a formality, but their real wishes were different. That's not how wills work. They weren't in their right minds," Harold said. "Your father was on medications that affected his judgment. Your mother was grieving and not thinking clearly." I stared at them, understanding flooding through me like ice water. "You're challenging the will." Amanda nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want to fight you, Gage, but Mom and Dad's true wishes need to be honored. I've hired a lawyer. We're filing a motion to have the will overturned on grounds of diminished capacity. Are you out of your mind? I've also filed for an injunction," she continued, her voice steadying now that the news was out, "to freeze all inherited assets until this is resolved. That includes your parking lot." The world tilted. "What does that mean?" Harold answered, almost apologetic. "It means you can't operate the lot, can't access any income from it, and can't use it as collateral until the court settles this. Could be months. All your contracts are suspended." Amanda put her sunglasses back on. "I'm sorry it came to this, but Mom and Dad wanted me to have everything." "You know that's true." They got back in her Mercedes and drove away, leaving me standing in the middle of my parking lot, holding a morning's receipts that suddenly meant nothing at all. The injunction hearing happened 2 weeks later in a courthouse that smelled like floor polish and old wood. I sat at a table with a court-appointed lawyer named Mr. Hendricks, who'd agreed to represent me for a $5,000 retainer, money I'd scraped together by borrowing from everyone I could. Amanda sat across the aisle with her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in a gray suit who looked like she ate people like me for breakfast. Amanda wore a black dress, modest and somber, playing the grieving daughter perfectly. Her lawyer stood and painted a picture of our elderly parents, confused and medicated, falling under the influence of their manipulative son. She produced text messages, supposedly from me, suggesting I'd isolated our parents from Amanda during their final months. I'd never sent those messages. They were fake, or taken completely out of context. But how do you prove that? The judge, an older man with silver hair and reading glasses, listened impassively. When it was our turn, Hendricks did his best, but we didn't have much. Just the original will and my word against Amanda's tears. The judge took less than an hour to decide. The injunction would remain in place pending a full hearing in 4 months. 4 months of no income from the lot while my debts piled up. I walked out of that courthouse feeling like I'd been beaten with a bat. The parking lot sat empty, chained shut by court order. I'd put up a sign explaining it was temporarily closed, but my regulars had already found other places to park. Thomas, Beth, Robert, all the familiar faces, gone. My corporate contract was void. The bills kept coming, though. Loan payments, credit card minimum payments, legal fees, rent on my apartment. By the end of the first month, I was hemorrhaging money. I picked up a night shift at a 24-hour diner called Mel's, working midnight to 8 in the morning, flipping eggs and pouring coffee for truckers and insomniacs. During the day, I tried to sleep, but mostly I lay awake obsessing over the court case. Tracy tried to be supportive at first. She'd come over after work, bring takeout, pretend everything was normal. But the tension grew. She wanted me to just settle with Amanda, give her the lot, move on with our lives. "You're destroying yourself over pride," she said one night, her voice sharp with frustration. "It's a parking lot, Gage. It's not worth this. It's the principle. Principle. Don't pay rent." We fought more than we talked. I could feel her slipping away, and I couldn't blame her. Who wants to date a guy who works nights at a diner and spends his days preparing for a legal battle he'll probably lose? She moved out of our shared apartment 3 months after the injunction, said she needed space. I knew what that meant. I couldn't afford the apartment on my own, so I moved back into my truck. Derek let me park in his driveway and use his shower in the mornings before my diner shift. One night, sitting in the diner during a slow patch around 3 in the morning, I pulled out my laptop and started digging through property records. I'd become obsessed with understanding every detail about my lot, searching for anything that might help my case. That's when I found it. The zoning classification showed my parcel as mixed use, corner lot, with development potential. I called an architect named James, who I'd met through Derek. He agreed to do a feasibility study for free, mostly out of curiosity. His report came back 2 weeks later. A small 3-story building would be viable on that lot. Retail ground floor, 6 apartments above. Projected value after construction, somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million. My cracked parking lot wasn't just valuable. It was potentially worth a fortune. That same week, I got a call from my grandmother Dorothy, my father's mother. I hadn't seen her in years. Amanda had excluded her from the funeral, claiming she was too old and frail to travel. "Can you come see me?" Dorothy asked, her voice thin but clear. I drove to her house the next afternoon, a small ranch in a neighborhood of mature trees and well-kept lawns. She answered the door leaning on a walker, but her eyes were sharp. "Let me look at you," she said, studying my face. "You look terrible. It's been a rough few months." She made tea, and we sat in her living room, surrounded by photographs of family members, including several of my father as a young man. "I know what your sister is doing," Dorothy said. "I tried to warn your father, years ago, that he was making a mistake favoring Amanda. But he wouldn't listen. Your mother had him convinced that Amanda needed more support because she was delicate." "Delicate," I repeated bitterly. "I'm going to help you." Dorothy disappeared into her bedroom and came back with an envelope. Inside was a check for $10,000. "For your legal fees." Don't argue with me. I wanted to cry. Instead, I thanked her and promised I'd pay her back. "Just win your case," she said. That's payment enough. The $10,000 bought me a better lawyer, a man named Richard Torres, who actually seemed to care about justice. He took one look at my case file and shook his head. "Your sister is playing dirty," he said. "But we can fight this." The full hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks away. Torres worked hard, gathering evidence, preparing our case. I felt cautiously hopeful for the first time in months. Then, the night before the hearing, Torres called me. "We have a problem," he said. "Amanda's lawyer just submitted new evidence. A handwritten letter, allegedly from your mother, dated 1 week before her death. It says she regretted the will and wanted to leave everything to Amanda." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible." A handwriting expert confirmed it matches your mother's writing. Gage. This just made our case almost impossible to win. I sat in my truck, parked in Derek's driveway, my mind racing. Then I remembered something. My mother had a stroke 3 months before she died. It affected her right side. She couldn't use her right hand. She couldn't have written anything. Her medical records, I said. We need her medical records from the hospital. Can you get them by tomorrow morning? I called the hospital. The records clerk said it would take 2 weeks to process the request through proper channels. The hearing was in 11 hours. I spent that night driving around the city, thinking, trying to figure out what to do. At dawn, I went to the diner for my shift, moving through the motions like a zombie, pouring coffee, and taking orders while my mind spun. When my shift ended at 8, I had 3 hours before the hearing. I drove to the courthouse early and sat in my truck, exhausted, defeated, out of options. My phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Gage? A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. Yes. This is Linda from the hospital records department. I got your messages. I'm not supposed to do this, but I saw how urgent it was. I rushed your mother's records through. I'm emailing them to you right now. I almost dropped the phone. Thank you. Thank you so much. The files came through. I downloaded them, scrolling frantically through pages of medical notes and charts. There it was, documentation of the stroke, notation about loss of function in the right hand, orders for occupational therapy to help her learn to use her left hand for basic tasks. She couldn't have written that letter. Not with her right hand. Not in her normal handwriting. I called Torres immediately. He met me outside the courthouse, reviewed the records, and his whole face changed. This changes everything, he said. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood-paneled and formal, with harsh fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired and gray. Amanda sat with her lawyer at one table, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I sat with Torres at another. My hands clenched so tight my knuckles were white. The judge entered, an older woman this time, Judge Patricia Morrison, with iron-gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. Amanda's lawyer went first, presenting their case with smooth confidence. She called Amanda to the stand, and my sister performed beautifully, voice trembling as she talked about our parents' final wishes, about how they'd confided in her, about how much they loved her, and wanted her to have everything. And your brother? The lawyer prompted. What was his relationship with your parents like? Amanda's face twisted with what looked like genuine pain. Gage was always distant, cold. He barely visited them in their final years. I was the one who took care of them, who brought them groceries, who sat with them during doctor's appointments. It was such a complete lie that I actually gasped. I'd visited our parents every week until they got sick of me asking why Amanda was their favorite. Uncle Harold testified next, backing up Amanda's story. He claimed he'd witnessed me being dismissive and cruel to our parents. Aunt Patricia said the same thing, adding tearful details about how our mother had cried about my coldness. Then came the letter. Amanda's lawyer presented it with the gravity of a sacred text. The handwriting looked exactly like my mother's flowing script. The signature matched. A handwriting expert had verified it. Your Honor, Amanda's lawyer said. This letter, written just days before Mrs. Whitmore's death, clearly states her true wishes. The will was created months earlier, before she understood her son's true nature. Judge Morrison called a recess before ruling. Torres and I huddled in the hallway. He showed the judge's clerk the medical records, explaining about the stroke, about the impossibility of my mother writing that letter with her paralyzed right hand. We reconvened. Torres presented the medical evidence. Amanda's lawyer looked surprised, but only for a moment. She huddled with Amanda, whispering urgently. Then she stood. Your Honor, we're aware of the stroke. However, Mrs. Whitmore learned to write with her left hand during her recovery. This letter was written with her left hand. She produced another document, A notarized statement from a notary public named Sarah Greenfield, dated correctly, stating that she'd witnessed my mother sign the letter using her left hand, and that my mother had been of sound mind and clear intent. The notary seal looked official. The signature matched public records. Torres looked at me, his expression grave. We had nothing to counter this. The judge frowned, studying both sets of documents. "I need time to investigate these claims," she said finally. "This hearing is continued for 6 weeks while I review the evidence. The injunction remains in place. 6 more weeks. 6 more weeks of no income, mounting debt, and watching my life circle the drain." I walked out of that courthouse feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Torres tried to say something encouraging, but I couldn't hear him over the roaring in my ears. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, head against the steering wheel, completely empty. My phone buzzed. "Derek. Gage. I've been doing some digging. Call me right now." I called. "I found the notary," Derek said, speaking fast. "Sarah Greenfield. She lives in Phoenix." I called her. Said I was verifying a document for an insurance claim. "Gage. She says she never met your mother. Never notarized any letter. Someone forged her signature and used her notary seal without permission." My exhaustion vanished, replaced by electric alertness. "You recorded this?" "Every word." "Derek, you're a genius. There's more. Remember Amanda's ex-boyfriend, Shane? The one she dated before she moved to the villa? I tracked him down. He's bitter about how things ended. Real bitter. He told me Amanda had been planning this for over a year. She practiced forging your mother's handwriting. Uncle Harold helped her create the fake notary document because she promised him 10% of the lot's value. Shane has text messages proving all of it. I could barely breathe. "Can you send me everything?" "Already emailed it." I called Torres immediately, my hands shaking as I forwarded him Derek's evidence. We met at his office an hour later. But Torres, after reviewing everything, shook his head slowly. "Gage, this won't work in court. Shane's text messages are hearsay. The notary statement to Derek isn't an official affidavit. We need her to testify in person under oath. Without that, we have nothing the judge will accept. So call her, get her to testify. She's 3 states away in Arizona." I already tried calling. She hung up on me. She's terrified of getting in legal trouble for having her seal forged. She doesn't want any part of this. I slumped in my chair, defeat washing over me again. That night, I was walking to my truck after my diner shift when I noticed the door was ajar. I always locked it. My stomach tightened. Someone had broken in. My laptop was gone from the passenger seat. I checked everywhere, panic rising. The backup hard drive where I'd saved Derek's evidence, also gone. Then I saw it. A note on my dashboard, written in block letters. "Stop helping Gage, or you're next." I called Derek immediately. He checked his apartment. His door had been jimmied open. His phone was gone. His laptop, gone. His place had been trashed. Furniture overturned. Papers scattered everywhere. "They got everything," Derek said, his voice shaken. "The recordings, the screenshots, everything." The next morning, I got worse news. Shane called me, his voice nervous and clipped. "I can't help you, man. I made it all up. I was drunk and angry. Amanda never did any of that stuff. Shane, you have proof. I don't have anything. Leave me alone." He hung up. When I tried calling back, the number was disconnected. I knew what had happened. Amanda had either paid him off or threatened him. Maybe both. All our evidence, gone. Our witnesses, scared or bought. The case was in 6 weeks, and we had nothing. I was going to lose everything. The eviction notice came 3 weeks later. Derek's neighbors had complained about me living in my truck in his driveway. The homeowners association had rules. Derek felt terrible, but there was nothing he could do. I spent that night parked in a different lot, then another, moving every few nights to avoid trouble. I showered at the 24-hour gym where I'd bought a cheap membership. I kept my work clothes in a duffel bag in the truck bed. I brushed my teeth in gas station bathrooms. My diner job barely covered gas and food. I defaulted on one credit card, then another. The collection calls started, voice messages piling up on my phone that I stopped listening to. Torres dropped my case. Without evidence and without payment, he couldn't continue. I'd have to represent myself at the final hearing in 3 weeks. I spent 3 days barely moving from my truck, parked behind a closed shopping center. I didn't eat, barely drank water, just sat there, staring at nothing, feeling the weight of total failure crushing down on me. On the 4th day, Dorothy found me. I don't know how. She pulled up in her old Buick, climbed out with her walker, and knocked on my window. "Open this door right now, Gage Whitmore." I opened the door. She looked at me, at the mess inside my truck, at my unshaven face and dirty clothes. Her expression softened. "Come with me. I'm fine here. You're not fine. You're giving up. Come to my house." She took me home, made me shower, fed me soup and sandwiches, and then sat me down at her kitchen table. "Your parents were wrong about you," she said. "They were wrong about a lot of things. But you will not let Amanda win by destroying yourself. You're going to fight." "With what?" "I've got nothing left. You've got yourself." That's more than she's ever had. Her words broke something open inside me. I cried for the first time since my parents died. Huge, gasping sobs that shook my whole body. Dorothy held my hand and let me cry it out. When I was done, emptied out and raw, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. A small spark of determination. "I need a private investigator," I said. "Someone who can go to Arizona and convince that notary to testify." "How much would that cost?" $3,000, at least. Dorothy stood up, went to her bedroom, came back with a checkbook. She wrote out a check for $3,000 and handed it to me. "From my savings. Consider it an investment in justice." I hired an investigator named Marcus, a former cop with contacts everywhere. He flew to Phoenix the next day. While Marcus worked, I decided to do my own investigating. I knew Amanda's patterns, knew she'd kept the code to the villa the same as our parents had used. Late one night, I drove to the lakefront property and let myself in through the back door. The house was dark and quiet. I crept through rooms that smelled like vanilla candles and expensive perfume, so different from the old furniture and comfortable clutter I remembered from my parents' time. I found Amanda's office, a converted bedroom with a glass desk and designer chair. Her laptop sat closed on the desk. I opened it, praying she hadn't changed the password. She hadn't. Still our mother's maiden name. I searched her files, my heart pounding at every small sound. Then I found them. A folder labeled estate documents. Inside were practice handwriting samples, pages of our mother's signature written over and over until Amanda had perfected it. Drafts of the fake letter, with corrections. Email exchanges with Uncle Harold, discussing how to forge the notary document. I took photos of everything with my phone, hands shaking with adrenaline and fury. Then I heard a car in the driveway. Headlights swept across the window. I closed the laptop, shoved my phone in my pocket, and looked for a place to hide. A closet in the hallway. I squeezed inside, pulling the door almost closed, and stood there in the darkness between winter coats that still smelled like my mother's perfume. The front door opened. Amanda's voice, laughing at something. Then another voice. Female. Familiar. My blood froze. Tracy. They came down the hallway, talking and laughing. Best friends now, apparently. They went into the kitchen. I heard wine being poured, the clink of glasses. "I still can't believe he's living in his truck," Tracy said. "It's so pathetic." "He did it to himself," Amanda replied. Always so stubborn. Always thought he was better than everyone. You're so much better off without your parents' negativity. That villa is gorgeous. I know, right? And once I get that parking lot too, I can sell it to developers. Could be worth $200,000 or more. They talked for another 20 minutes while I stood in that closet. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. Tracy, who I'd loved, who I'd thought might be the one, was now Amanda's friend, laughing about my suffering. Finally, they moved toward the living room. I seized my chance, slipped out of the closet, and headed for the back door. I almost made it. My foot caught a decorative vase on a hall table. It wobbled, tipped, crashed to the floor. What was that? Amanda's voice, sharp with alarm. I ran. Out the back door, across the yard, to my truck parked a block away. My phone buzzed as I started the engine. Amanda's security app had caught me on camera. I could see the notification, a blurry image of someone running from her back door. I drove straight back to the shopping center parking lot, my hands shaking on the wheel. The next morning, a police officer knocked on my truck window. Amanda had filed a breaking and entering complaint. A restraining order followed that afternoon. I was not to come within 500 feet of Amanda or her property. The photos I'd taken of her laptop files, evidence of the forgery, were now potentially inadmissible. I'd obtained them illegally. Torres had warned me about this, back when he was still my lawyer. Fruit of the poisonous tree, he'd called it. The hearing was in 1 week. Marcus called that night. While I was sitting in my truck, eating a gas station sandwich. "I've got good news and bad news," he said. "Bad news first. The notary, Sarah Greenfield. She's willing to testify by video deposition that her seal was forged. She'll confirm she never met your mother, never notarized any letter. That's the good news. What's the bad news? She needs $5,000 to cover her time off work, travel to a secure deposition facility, and legal consultation to make sure she's protected. And she needs it by tomorrow night to guarantee her testimony for your hearing. $5,000. I had $11.37 in my checking account. "I'll figure it out," I said, having no idea how. I spent the next day trying everything. Called everyone I knew. Begged. Pleaded. Derek had already given me everything he could. Dorothy was tapped out from the $3,000. My credit was destroyed. No bank would touch me. By midnight, sitting in my truck behind that abandoned shopping center, I'd accepted defeat. I couldn't raise $5,000 by tomorrow night. The hearing was in 6 days. Without the notary's testimony, I'd lose the lot, lose everything. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Is this Gage Whitmore?" A man's voice, smooth and professional. "Yeah, my name is Carson Mitchell. I'm a property developer. I tried to purchase your parking lot about 6 months ago, before all this legal trouble. I've been following your case. How did you get this number? I have resources. Listen, I know you need $5,000 for that notary testimony. I'll give it to you right now. Tonight. I can have a courier at your location within the hour." My heart started pounding. "What's the catch? When you win your case and get the lot back, you sell it to me immediately for $60,000. Quick sale. No games. Cash deal. The lot's appraised at $45,000. I'm aware. I'm offering you $15,000 more than it's worth. That's a good deal. Why would you do that? Because I believe you'll win, and I want that property. I have plans for it. So here's your choice, Gage. Take my money right now. Win your case tomorrow, but sell me the lot and walk away with just enough to clear your debts. Or don't take it. Lose everything tomorrow, and watch your sister sell the lot to whoever she wants. You've got 60 seconds to decide." I thought about everything I'd discovered. The mixed-use zoning, the development potential. The architect's feasibility study showing the lot could be worth $1 million someday. But tomorrow, I'd have nothing. 45 seconds, Gage. I thought about sleeping in my truck, about collection agencies, about Amanda's smug face, about my parents' contempt from beyond the grave. 30 seconds. I'll take the deal, I heard myself say. Smart man. Where are you? I gave him the address. 37 minutes later, a man in a suit arrived with a briefcase, handed me an envelope with $5,000 in cash, and a contract. I signed it. The money felt heavy in my hands. I called Marcus immediately and wired him the money for the notary. Then I sat in my truck and stared at that contract, realizing what I'd just done. Even if I won tomorrow, I'd already lost. The courthouse steps felt steeper than I remembered as I climbed them on the morning of the final hearing. I'd slept 3 hours, showered at the gym, and put on my one remaining dress shirt and tie. In my briefcase was every piece of evidence I'd managed to salvage, along with the confirmation of Sarah Greenfield's video testimony. I walked into that courtroom alone. No lawyer, no family, just me against Amanda and her legal team. Judge Morrison entered, and we all stood. When she sat, we Saturday. Amanda looked perfect in a navy dress, her hair styled, her makeup subtle and tasteful. I probably looked like exactly what I was, a man who'd been living in his truck for months. The judge reviewed the case file, then looked at me over her reading glasses. Mr. Whitmore, I see you're representing yourself today. Yes, Your Honor. You understand that puts you at a significant disadvantage? I understand. Very well. Proceed with your evidence. I stood on shaky legs and began presenting my case. First, I introduced the video testimony from Sarah Greenfield. The screen flickered to life, showing a nervous woman in her 50s sitting in a deposition room in Phoenix. State your name for the record, I said, following the script Marcus had helped me write. Sarah Louise Greenfield. I'm a notary public, licensed in the state of Arizona. Have you ever met a woman named Margaret Whitmore? No, I have not. Have you ever notarized any document for Margaret Whitmore? No. Never. Your notary seal appears on a document dated March 19th of this year, supposedly witnessing Margaret Whitmore's signature on a letter. Can you explain that? That document is a forgery. Someone used my seal without my knowledge or permission. I've filed a police report about the theft of my seal information. Amanda's lawyer jumped up, objecting strenuously, but Judge Morrison allowed the testimony to continue. I watched Amanda's face drain of color. Next, I presented my mother's medical records, walking through the stroke, the paralysis, the timeline that made her handwriting that letter impossible. Then came the hardest part. Cross-examining Amanda. She took the stand, still composed, but I could see cracks forming. Her lawyer had prepped her well, but I'd known her my whole life. I knew her tells. Amanda, you testified that our parents verbally promised you everything. When exactly did these conversations happen? Multiple times. Throughout their final year. Can you give me specific dates? She faltered. I don't remember exact dates. We talked often. Our father died on January 7th. When was the last time you claim he promised you everything? A few days before. So around January 4th or 5th? Around then? Yes. I pulled out phone records. According to these records, you didn't call our parents at all during the first week of January. You didn't visit them. How did you have this conversation? I must be misremembering the dates. Must be. Let's talk about the letter. You submitted a letter supposedly written by our mother on March 19th, but our mother was hospitalized on March 16th and remained hospitalized until her death on March 28th. Hospital visitation logs show you visited her once during that time, on March 23rd, for approximately 30 minutes. When did she give you this letter? Amanda's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Amanda stammered through an answer that made no sense. I pressed harder, using everything I'd learned from the files on her laptop. Careful not to reveal how I knew these details. I asked about the handwriting practice, about her communications with Uncle Harold, about the notary seal. She contradicted herself, then contradicted the contradictions. She got flustered, angry, defensive. Judge Morrison watched it all with an increasingly stern expression. When I called Uncle Harold to the stand, he crumbled faster. He was a small-time accountant, not a criminal mastermind. Under questioning, he admitted he'd helped Amanda secure documentation, but claimed he didn't know it was fake. So you helped her obtain a notarized document from a notary in Arizona, 3 states away, for a letter that my mother supposedly wrote while hospitalized in Oregon? I was just helping my niece. By committing fraud? I object to that characterization, Amanda's lawyer said. But her voice lacked conviction. The hearing went on for hours. By the end, Amanda was crying. But this time, it looked less like grief and more like panic. Judge Morrison called a recess, then returned with her ruling. "I've heard enough," she said, her voice cold. "This court finds that the letter submitted by Amanda Whitmore was fraudulent. The notary document was forged. The will of Margaret and Donald Whitmore stands as originally written. The injunction is hereby lifted immediately. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of possible criminal fraud and forgery. Amanda Whitmore is ordered to pay Gage Whitmore's legal expenses in the amount of $25,000. This case is closed." She gavelled, and it was over. I'd won. People filed out of the courtroom. Amanda rushed past me without looking, her face buried in her hands. Uncle Harold followed, ashen. I stood there, waiting to feel victorious. Instead, I felt hollow, because I remembered the contract in my briefcase. The deal with Carson. He called me that afternoon. "Congratulations." I saw the news. "When can we finalize the sale?" "Give me a day." 24 hours, Gage. Then I'm holding you to that contract." I spent those 24 hours at Dorothy's house, sitting at her kitchen table, staring at the lot deed and the purchase agreement. $25,000 from Amanda for legal fees. $60,000 from Carson for the lot. After paying off all my debts, I'd walk away with maybe $11,000. The next day, Carson arrived at a title company office with his lawyer and a cashier's check. I signed the papers, my hand moving automatically, disconnected from my brain. The lot that I'd transformed, that I'd bled for, that represented my one chance to prove my parents wrong, changed ownership in 15 minutes of paperwork. Carson shook my hand, smiling. "Pleasure doing business with you." I walked out with my check and no parking lot. That night, I sat in a cheap motel room I'd rented with some of the settlement money. First bed I'd slept in that wasn't my truck in months. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, wondering how I'd let this happen. My phone rang. A city planner named Jennifer Martinez. "Mr. Whitmore, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I wanted to inform you about the upcoming transit development in your area. I don't own property there anymore." "Oh." A pause. "That's unfortunate. The city council just approved funding for a major transit hub, 2 blocks from where your lot was located. Property values in that area are projected to increase 400% over the next 2 years. I thought you'd want to know for your development plans. 400%. My lot would have been worth over $1 million within 2 years." Carson had known. That's why he'd been so eager to buy it. I'd won the legal battle and lost everything that mattered. I didn't answer when Jennifer asked if I was still there. I just ended the call and lay back on the motel bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, feeling more defeated than when I'd been sleeping in my truck. The next morning, Dorothy called. "Come see me today. It's important." I drove to her house, expecting another pep talk. Instead, she was sitting in her living room with papers spread across the coffee table. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile. "Sit down, Gage. Saturday. I've been diagnosed with cancer. Stage 4, pancreatic. They're giving me 6 months, maybe a bit more with treatment." The words hit like a physical blow. "Dorothy, no, it's all right. I'm 87 years old. I've had a good life." She smiled. but her eyes were sad. But I need to get my affairs in order. I have a property I've been renting out for 30 years. A small commercial building about 3 blocks from where your parking lot was. My heart started beating faster. I bought it in 1995 for $40,000. Been a good investment. Current value is around $90,000. But with this transit hub going in, it'll be worth $300,000 or $400,000 in a couple years. Maybe more. She picked up a property deed and held it, studying it. I need to decide who gets this property when I die. I only have 2 grandchildren. You and Amanda. The room felt suddenly airless. What do you think I should do, Gage? Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. Dorothy smiled, a knowing expression on her face. Right on time, she opened the door. Amanda stood there with Uncle Harold, both carrying flowers and casserole dishes. "Grandma Dorothy," Amanda said, her voice syrupy sweet, "we heard you weren't feeling well. We wanted to check on you." They swept in, setting up food in the kitchen, fussing over Dorothy. Amanda barely glanced at me, but I saw the calculation in her eyes. She knew about the property. Somehow, she'd found out. Dorothy settled into her chair, looking tired. "How thoughtful of you both. Stay for tea?" And just like that, the battle started all over again. Amanda visited Dorothy every single day after that. She brought homemade meals, fresh flowers from expensive shops, photo albums from when she was young. She'd sit for hours, chatting about family memories, asking about Dorothy's health, playing the devoted granddaughter with Academy Award-level commitment. Uncle Harold came too, always hovering, helping with small tasks around the house, making himself indispensable. They brought magazines and books. They offered to drive Dorothy to doctor's appointments. They talked about how family should stick together, especially during hard times. I saw exactly what they were doing. It was the same game they'd played with my parents, the same manipulation, just with better polish from practice. Dorothy seemed to be falling for it. She'd smile at Amanda's stories, accept her casseroles, let Harold fix her leaky faucet. I watched it happen and felt that familiar helplessness creeping back in, but I refused to compete. I visited Dorothy too, 3 or 4 times a week, but I didn't bring fancy gifts or put on a show. I just sat with her. We'd drink tea and talk about everything and nothing. I'd help her with crossword puzzles. I'd read her the newspaper when her eyes got tired. Sometimes we'd sit in comfortable silence while she dozed in her chair, and I just kept her company. One afternoon, while Amanda and Harold were out running errands for her, Dorothy looked at me with those sharp eyes that age hadn't dimmed. "You know what they're doing, don't you?" "Yes. And you're not going to fight them for my property?" "It's not mine to fight for. It's yours to give to whoever you want." She studied me for a long moment. "Come with me." She led me to her spare bedroom, moving slowly with her walker. On the desk was a digital recorder, the kind that picks up every sound in a room. "I've been recording every visit," she said. "Amanda and Harold don't know." She played me a clip from yesterday. Amanda and Harold talking in the kitchen, thinking Dorothy was asleep in her chair. "Once we get the property transferred, we sell it immediately," Amanda said. "Split the money. You still get your 10%. "What about the old lady? What about her? She'll be dead in 6 months anyway." Harold laughed. "Cold, Amanda. But practical." Dorothy stopped the recording. "I've got hours of this. Them plotting, scheming, talking about me like I'm already in the ground. They visit 40 times, and not once have they asked me how I'm really feeling or what I'm afraid of. They talk at me, not with me." She took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "You're the only one who sees me as a person, not a bank account. That's why I'm giving you the property. I'm transferring it to you while I'm still alive so they can't contest it after I'm gone. Dorothy, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. For me. So I can die, knowing I did one thing right in this whole mess your father created." She'd already had the papers drawn up by her lawyer. We signed them that afternoon. The property became mine, transferred for $1, all legal and binding. 2 days later, She called a family meeting. Amanda and Harold arrived with big smiles, probably expecting her to announce she was updating her will in their favor. Instead, Dorothy sat them down in her living room and played the recordings. Amanda's face went from confident to confused to horrified as she heard her own voice plotting Dorothy's death and dividing up her assets. Harold stood up, stammering excuses, but Dorothy held up her hand. "Get out of my house. Both of you. Don't ever come back." "Grandma, we were just joking around," Amanda tried. "Out. No." They left, Amanda shooting me a look of pure hatred on her way out the door. After they were gone, Dorothy sagged in her chair, exhausted. "I'm too old for this drama," she said. But it felt good. With the property secured, I threw myself into developing it. I used my $11,000 plus a small business loan to hire Derek as my construction manager. We developed a plan. Gut the old building, create a modern mixed use space. Ground floor retail, 6 apartments above. The work was grueling, but purposeful. I was building something real, something that would last. Beth from the coffee shop heard about my project and approached me about expanding her business. "I need a bigger location. Could I lease your ground floor retail?" We negotiated a 5-year lease that covered my loan payments, and then some. The apartments pre-rented within 2 weeks of listing them. Young professionals moving to the neighborhood, attracted by the transit hub construction. Carson, the developer who'd bought my parking lot, showed up at the construction site one day, his face red with anger. "You're undercutting my plans," he said. "I'm developing the lot next door. Your building is going to compete with mine." "Free market," I said. "You taught me that. I could sue you for interference. For building on property I legally own? Good luck with that." He tried to intimidate me, threatened legal action. But I'd learned my lesson about bullies. I stood my ground. Eventually, he left, still fuming. A week later, he called with a different tone. "What if we partnered on future developments? Combined resources?" "Not interested," I said. "I don't need your resources anymore." The district attorney prosecuted Amanda and Uncle Harold for the fraud and forgery related to the fake will letter. The trial was quick. The evidence was overwhelming. Amanda took a plea deal. 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and $50,000 in restitution to me for legal fees and damages. To pay the restitution, she had to sell the villa. The lakefront property went on the market. A young family bought it for $1.3 million. Amanda walked away with barely enough to cover her legal fees and the restitution. She moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. Uncle Harold got 6 months in county jail. I heard through Dorothy that Aunt Patricia divorced him while he was inside. Dorothy lived long enough to see my building completed. We had a grand opening on a sunny Saturday in October. She came in her wheelchair, wearing a purple dress and pearls, looking more alive than she had in months. I'd named the building Dorothy's Corner. Her name was etched in stone above the main entrance. "It's beautiful," she said, tears running down her wrinkled cheeks. "You built something beautiful, Gage." She died 2 weeks later, peacefully in her sleep. I held her funeral in the community room of Dorothy's Corner. 30 people came, tenants and neighbors and friends from her long life. Amanda didn't show up. 6 months after Dorothy's death, I stood on the roof of the building, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. The transit hub was almost finished. Property values had increased exactly as predicted. My building was now worth close to $900,000. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, one of my tenants. She was a high school teacher, smart and funny, with a smile that made me feel like maybe I could trust again. "Dinner tonight. I'm making lasagna." I smiled and texted back, "I'll bring wine." Standing there, looking out over the neighborhood that had transformed from abandoned warehouses to thriving community, I thought about my parents' will. That parking lot, meant as a final insult, had taught me more than any inheritance of wealth ever could. It taught me that value isn't given, It's created. That resilience matters more than resources. That people who try to destroy you sometimes give you exactly what you need to build yourself stronger. My parents tried to break me with their contempt. Amanda tried to take even that cracked asphalt away. But in failing to destroy me, they forced me to discover what I was capable of building. I'd turned nothing into something. I'd survived homelessness and debt and betrayal. I'd learned to stand up and fight back. I'd found out who my real family was, and it wasn't the people who shared my blood. Dorothy's Corner stood as proof that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's creation. The best victory isn't winning what someone tried to take from you. It's building something they could never imagine. I went downstairs to meet Sarah, feeling lighter than I had in years. The past was done. The future was mine to build, and I'd learned I was pretty good at building. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated by family, or had to prove yourself against impossible odds? How did you turn that challenge into your strength? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming adversity, and share this with someone who needs to hear that their worst moments can become their greatest comebacks. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the worst inheritance turns out to be the best gift you never knew you needed. Until next time, keep building your own corner of the world.